Well, hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining me. Always glad to have you all on board and to share with you on this platform. Now, this is the Ground Up series, and this happens to be probably the last within the segment of things that I'll be sharing. And so I'm pretty glad to have you all on board and open to share with you a few things. And we'll build up from that in some other time within the year, probably sometime within Q3, and then we'll see how that goes. But I mean, definitely, aside that, I'll have some sessions which I'll be sharing with all of you as we go ahead. And so don't worry so much in there, quite a lot of things to share. And so we'll see how that goes. But just to give a recap of a few things that we've done. So key amongst them, how to set up the CLI, okay, AWS CLI. So that's done a while back. In terms of billing alerts, how to get that done also. And then we looked previously also about hosting a static website on EC2 or S3, whichever one suits your fancy. That's something that you could always look at. I think there were a couple of others. But today we are looking at how to nuke your resources on AWS. Now, key things we'll be looking at today, so how to actually download and install the AWS Nuke utility, how to configure the CLI. I'm not going to dive so much into that because we already have that done. If you want to check that out, you could check out the YouTube page. That'll be pretty straightforward from there. Now, aside that, another thing we'll be looking at would be the, how do you call it? Another thing we'll be looking at is how to configure the YAML file. So if you are configuring, you actually have to configure for the AWS infrastructure, that's the CLI. Okay, so with your secret access key and all of that. And then aside that, you'd also have to configure a YAML file for the AWS Nuke utility and then specify a few things. And then finally, we'll run a few commands, in terms of the resource types and all of that. And then we'll be pretty much good to go. All right, with that being said, let's start off there and let's just get into that. So there are a few things here. I mean, I did share on that within the blog, very key to take note of. So just do well to take a look at those as and when you have the time. Now, aside that, also do well to make sure that as you go along, you can look at the releases. Okay, now within the releases, there are a couple of things that you can look at. So you have the Docker image that you could take a look at, and then of course within the release page. So within the release page, you have a few things in there. So first off, we have for different how do you call it, different environments. So if you are using a Linux environment, that's possible. If you are using a Windows environment, that's also possible. If you want to actually build from the source code also, that is something that you can also do. So these are the key options which are available. And then you could get a source code built from there, or you could have, let's say, how do you call it? You have the different components as well, and then also work from that. So these are the few things to take note of. So I would actually go with the AMD 64 since I'm using a Linux environment. And then once I have that done, I will just download that. Now, I already have that downloaded, right? So I'll just go ahead and then grab my terminal here. Let me just grab my terminal and then we could go ahead. Let me see. Right, so all right, so I have that there and you can see my zip file here, okay? So you can see that there. So the key thing I have to do is to extract that. So since it's a tar file, I could just go ahead. Now, on the Linux environment, of course, if I wanted to use the file editor to make that happen, that's also possible, okay? But since I'm using the terminal, I could just go ahead and then have that done. So I have that extracted in there, okay? So I have that extracted. So you can see here that we have the AWS Nuke version 2.250. .0-Linux AMD, right? Now, key thing, as I mentioned within the blog post, now it's ideal that I rename the file, okay? And so let's see, I just renamed that to AWS Nuke. All right. And then I'm pretty much good to go from there. Now, the reason why I'm renaming it is that it becomes easier if I want to actually use this particular command. Okay, so that's one thing to actually take note of. All right, so it becomes very simple. I mean, you don't have to hassle so much as to how to have that done. I've been typing out the whole command like that with the version and all of those things. Now, once I have that done, right, I have to actually go to the user.bin folder. Okay, now I already have that here. Okay, so don't worry about that. Let's just find that. Okay, so you see that that's already installed here. Okay, so we already have that installed, so I don't have to how do you call it, worry my head about reinstalling that. Okay, that's done for me already, so I could just go ahead and then proceed from there. Of course, now I have to configure my CLI, as I mentioned earlier. Let's see if I do S3 ls. Okay, now you'd notice I'm not going to get a good response because my keys are not the ones that are working. All right, so I have to make sure I have a working key. So that will be the profile that we are going to be using. So I'm going to be using a profile by name of AWS Nuke. Okay, and then that's what we'll be working with. Okay, so just take note of that. So we're going to be working with that particular profile, and then we would actually use that to continue and then do whatever we have to do. So I have that here. Now, if I do this, you notice that it's actually going to list out the S3 files that I have in there to tell me that, okay, that's working. So from that side of things, we are pretty much good to go. Now, we also have to configure. Okay, so let me just change to my playground. Let's see here. Now, we also need to configure a config file, or we need to put together a config file. Okay, I'm going to do that the old-fashioned way. And so let's see here. Okay, so I could have the option of using, let's say, Nano or Vim to actually do that, but I just prefer to go with a test editor because I mean I have that available to me to use, so that's totally fine. So let me just go ahead and let's look at the base config file. So here you're actually provided with a minimal config file that you could use. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and then copy that here. Okay, all right, great. So I have that here. Then I could just go ahead and then paste that. Right now, let's just walk through a couple of things which are here, and then we'll proceed. So key things in terms of the region. Okay, so what region would you want to work with? That's totally fine. And so EUS1, that's great. So that means that all the services within EUS1 would actually be targeted when I run this command. Now, aside that, I could also specify the global. Now, you notice that within the AWS infrastructure, there are some services which are considered global services. They are not necessarily tied to a particular region. So if you are looking at IAM, for example, IAM, sorry, you actually have that going as a service which is not, let's say, region specific. Okay. Now, aside that, we have the account block list. Now, the account block list is one of the key things that you should take note of. Now, if you do not specify that within your config file, that is actually going to throw an error or the whole command is going to abort. So you need to definitely specify that. Now, why do you need that? Based on the account that you're using. So let's say a production server account, you do not want that to be deleted at any point in time. You don't want some resources to be deleted there. So you can actually go ahead and then specify that such that what the resources there are not deleted. Now, in my case, based on the approach I'm going to go, I'll not necessarily need that. So I just put in some dummy values here. Okay, so this is actually not a real, how do you call it, AWS account. So that's totally fine. And then I'll go ahead and then copy my account ID proper from here. Okay, so I'll just copy that. And then I'll paste that here for this one. Okay, so just this more or less like the base or the ground how do you call it, the ground approach you'd have when you have to configure all of this. All right, so I have that here, and let's see. So I could save that and it'll close that. I hope that should work fine. All right, yeah, that should work fine. Yeah, so once that's done, right, so I could now go ahead and then start off with my command. So the first command that you're supposed to type, so AWS Nuke, okay, and then you are supposed to specify this config file. So -c. Once I specify that with a -c config file, then I also need to specify the profile. So the CLI profile that I'm using, which is what the AWS Nuke, okay. Then I hit enter. So that's going to give me some bit of information there, and then we could proceed from there. So let's see what we are going to get there. Now, first thing they ask you is to type in what the alias. Okay, so we've already created an alias, and if you want to find out how to create the alias, okay, there's actually an option to check out from here. So let's see. So here, okay, there's the set of instructions that are available that you could now follow to make sure that what you complete that alias, or you're able to create that alias. This is actually from AWS side of things, and it's very simple. So you can just reference that and then you'll be good to go. So I have that alias created. So they're asking me to now go ahead and then type that alias in there. So that's the alias that shows here, EN Mingo. So EN Mingo, I just typed that out. And let's see what we have from there. So, all right, great. So it now goes ahead to list out number of the resources which are available. There are quite a number of interesting ones there. So we'll probably take a look at them. And then just take note as it goes. Probably you might not see that, but I'll just show that. So there are some of them that tells you that, okay, cannot delete, okay? And then there are some of them that tells you that, okay, we would remove. Okay, so would remove means that those are items that can be deleted, or those are items that will be deleted. And then there are some others that cannot be deleted. Okay, so these are the key things that you look at. So there are quite a number of services here. I see some things to do with the subnet, something to do with the machine learning prediction, ML stuff. We have something to do with Athena. The IAM virtual MFA devices are even there, and then all of these things. So these are the options which are available. And if I go ahead and then I add the no, how do you call it? So if I add the no dry run parameter, okay, it's actually going to delete all of these things, right? Now, that becomes very important for us to know. So we have to know what exactly we want to delete. Okay, now, of course, and then we have to know which account we are in, because if you're in a production server, I mean, you find yourself that most of the time there might be some things which would be performing some functions that you may not necessarily know about. Okay, so one key thing is ideal that you do not run this within your production account. Let's say a temporary account that if you lose something in there, that's not going to affect your workload. That's pretty great step to go with. Now, with that done, we'll probably go ahead and look at a few things. So we'd want to look at the options that we have available. So if you look here, okay. If you look here, we actually have some options to do with some parameters that we could work on. Okay, so how do we target some specific resources? These are options that you have within that. Let me just head to the GitHub page again, and then let's see that. Where did I leave that? All right, so we have that here, and then we can proceed. Now, let's see. So if I scroll to the bottom here, and there are a couple of options which are available. So we have here, specifying the resource type to delete. Okay, so you can specify that, and then you could, so you can specify the resource type, and then there are some other options. But I just want us to look at specifying those resource types. And then once we have that done, I mean, you should be pretty much good to go from there. So with the resource types, right, there are quite a number of them which are available. And then there are two ways to actually specify that. So as part of your command, as part of the command that you'd run, okay, you could now specify the resource type. So let's say you want to specify that you want some particular resources. So I just want to target, let's say S3 resources. Okay, so that will be S3, okay, bucket. Take note of the casing used. So S capital, all of that follows along that. So if I type that here, it should actually be able to give me some options. But at the moment, within my region, okay, the region that I specified in the config file, I do not have any of the resources there. So it's not going to show me anything. So that's totally understandable. We'll definitely come back to that. But let's look here. So you notice that resource types actually specified a couple of them. Now, how do I find the various resources that are available? It's pretty simple. So I could type AWS Nuke and then I type resource types. Okay, so resource types, and you see that there are quite a lot of them here. So you even have WAF, you have S-Ray, you have the storage bucket, and then you have for S3 also. So S3, we have the S3 bucket, we have the access point, we have the multi-path upload, one that I find very interesting, and then you have the S3 object as well. So these are all options which are available. If you have the famous EC2, okay, you have quite a number of things there. So you have for the instance, you have for the image, you have for the host, the launch template. All of these are things that you can target and then be able to delete them from within your environment. So just take note of that as you go along. So we have that done. So let's see. Let's look at the config file again. I want us to target specifically some S3 buckets in there. So we are going to just take a look at that, and then maybe we'll create some buckets within the EU West 1, okay, and then just see. So still AWS S3. Let me see if I remember the command. So MB S3, right? Let's give the name Ian Mingo trial. Let's say 90. Okay, so I had a couple of them going, so I'll just go with that. And then I would add for the region, right? Because I want to specify the region. So that's that'll be EU West 1. Okay, so West 1. And then the profile, because I'm using the AWS Nuke profile, I could just go ahead and then specify that. AWS Nuke here. Let's see if I'm going to have that done. Okay, so that's done for me. Okay, so if I do AWS S3 LS, right, I should see that as part of the buckets which are available. Let me just specify the profile. Yep, so with the profile, AWS Nuke. So I have that showing here, Ian Mingo trial 90, which is good. Now let's run the nuke command again to see if we can actually get the bucket showing. So we just want to see if we can have the 90 showing. Okay, so once we have that showing, then we could see if we can go ahead and then delete that as well. So Ian Mingo here. Let's see. All right, great. So good news, we have that showing here. So EU West 1, we have the bucket name showing here. And it means that if we actually want to delete that, we could go ahead and then delete that. Now, before we come and then delete that, just take note. So we have this for the very first time we run the command. So the total number of resources that are been identified, okay? And then how many of them are possible to be deleted? So which ones can we delete? And then which of them are filtered? So all of these are options which are available. Okay, so take note of this. So the above can be deleted if we actually implement the no dry parameter as part of everything I want to do. All right, so let me head back to the GitHub files location, and you could see that these are all options which are available. So as I said, two options to do that. You can do that within the command, or we can edit our config file and then specify that. So let's just edit that and then let's see how that looks like. Let me just bring up my gedit as well. So gedit, and then I would go ahead and then type for my config file. Okay, great. So let's just bring that up again. So you notice that resource types, right? And then no, let me just go with this one. So resource type, and then we specify the target, and then we are good to go. Let me just copy the whole thing and then I'll just edit that one out of it. Okay. So I just need the S3 bucket. So let's just go with that. And then let me take out the object also. I don't really need this comment, so that's fine. And I can delete these ones as well. Okay, so that's that. Now, if I wanted to run this, what I'll do is that I would go ahead and then run the command. Okay, so let me just type out the command. Nuke, okay, AWS Nuke, and then C for the config file. And then I need to specify the profile that I'm using, which is the AWS Nuke profile. And let's see how that goes. Okay. Yeah, and bingo. So take note, I'm still not adding the no dry run command. Okay, so that's really fine. So you notice that with that, it actually shows that for me because that's part of the config file that I used. Okay, so it's as simple as it gets there. And then you can specify the different types of resources. So if I did the gedit, I did a config.yaml, right? I could also specify, let's say here, I could specify different instances. So if I had an EC2 instance, right, I could specify that here. If I wanted, let's say, what other options did we have for the EC2? Let's see. Okay, yeah, it's still available here. So let's see if I could, let's see. I think we could look at something to do with a key pair. Okay, so let's try the key pair and let's try the VPC. Okay, so EC2, let's try the VPC first. So EC2 key pair. I hope that would actually give something as well. So key pair. I don't have an instance running. I would have probably used that. So don't worry. So let's just go with the key pair. Definitely one of those will be there. Let's see. I think a subnet too. Yes, because there'll definitely be some subnets in there. Probably they'll show up the default subnets with the VPC that's there. So, all right, so I have all of these done, right? Specified as targets within the config file. Then I can go ahead and then run the command again. Let me just exit from here. All right, and let me type out the command again. Right, no targets here. Hit on that. Let's see. Definitely have to confirm with the alias. So Ian Mingo. Then, okay, great. Awesome. So you notice that EUS1, right? So first off, we have a VPC showing, okay? Is default true. So that's the default VPC, right? So if I had created another sub VPC there, that would have shown that is default, which is false. So I have that there. The subnets, the default subnets are also the default for AZ, that's true. Default for AZ, that's true. Default VPC, that's true. Okay, so at least you get some bit of information there pertaining to that particular, let's say, subnet and then the VPC. There was no key pair, so that did not show as well. So these are the items that are showing in there. Now, of course, I'll just edit that again because I want to delete just the S3 bucket, okay? So we want to have a feel of how that's going to look like, and then we'll be good to go, okay? All right, so let's run that again. Nuke. Let's check if we have just the S3 showing. So that should be all that will be showing there. Yep. Okay, great. So we just have that showing, right? Now, once that's done, let's run that. And don't forget, if you want to actually execute that, we'll need to provide the no dry run parameter. I hit enter and let's see how different that would look like. So definitely it's going to ask us to enter the alias. That's fine. And it tells us the version, right? Okay, yeah. I think the other ones also showed that, so that's fine. Ian Mingo. And let's see, what else do we have here? And then it asks, you really want to delete the resources on the account ID. Okay, so this is what? A second validation. Okay, so I just type Ian Mingo here. Okay, to say that, okay, I totally want to delete these ones. I understand what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. Okay, and then it goes by that. So removal requested. So there's a removal request, 1 waiting, 0 failed, 0 skipped, 0 finished, right? And then it's going to change over time as it goes on. So still 1 waiting, 0 failed, 0 skipped, 0 finished, okay? and then it gives the final one, which says that what nuke complete, okay, 0 failed, 0 skipped, and then 1 finished. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward there. So depending on the resources that you have, you could actually do that. Now, if I was to nuke the whole account, that would mean that the 171 or however the number of resources that are there, those would all show. All right, so it's good that you actually get to target the resources that you are deleting, and then that becomes an easy approach that you work with. So you can specify that in here. You see some examples of the templates there which you can use, and there's an interesting thing here. Okay, so you can have an exclude. Okay, as far as you are targeting, you could also exclude some particular resources. So that's something that you could do. So you want to exclude the IAM user. So aside everything else that you want to delete, you don't want to delete, let's say, the IAM user. Okay, so everything else within the IAM user, you want to delete that, but within the account, but you don't want to delete the IAM user. You can specify different things. Let's say you still want to keep your EC2, you still want to keep some specific services listed out there. Those are also possible. And then there's the option for the cloud control API. You could always read about that and then see how that looks like. You have the feature flags, you have the filtering resources. Okay, so if you want to filter the resources based on some specific parameters, so there are quite a number of them there, some different filter types. So exact, contains, I mean, you think of these as operators as you are coding. Okay, so these are all things that you could look at. And then I think that sort of brings us to the end of all that it is with this. And of course, you can definitely explore around different options to see how that looks like. Now, I want to show one final thing before I go ahead. Now, within AWS, right? Let's see, AWS. Let me see if I'll find that. AWS Nuke. Yeah, so AWS actually provides an option. Okay, yes, this is it. So AWS actually provides an option where you can now delete the resources within your environment using step functions. Okay, so that's what you have here. So it gives you a step function, okay, and then it provides you with a CloudFormation template that actually goes ahead to build all of this out for you. Now, let me show you the diagram, the architecture, how that looks like typically. So you have your development account, right? You have, let's say, an event bridge rule. Then you have your step functions, okay, going ahead with that. And then there's the S3 bucket where you get the CloudFormation template or whatever configurations you want to use. And then from there, it can now go ahead, whichever region that you want to specify, using the AWS Nuke utility, you can delete those resources. Okay, so it's as simple as that. And then, of course, you have an email notification also tapped in there. So this is actually a good one to take a look at. Okay, very, very interesting stuff. And I mean, it's more advanced in some settings because you are using different services in there. So you could just take a look at that, I mean, for your learning preferences. And so let me just show, I think there's the CloudFormation template here. So you can just take a look at that in there. I mean, quite lengthy templates, but just the description gives you a clear idea of what you could actually do with this. Okay, so just pretty straightforward, and then it's able to delete whatever resources that you need to delete. So the buckets, I mean, quite a number of things here. It would be good to just take a look at those ones and then see how that goes. So I think that's one addition there. But take note, this actually uses the AWS Nuke utility, and then it makes it possible for you to make that happen. All right. So I think that's about that, and we'll probably end that for this session. Okay. Now, I want to thank all of you again so very much for making it possible or taking the time to join me over this period. And it's been very amazing. I mean, working with all of you on this project. And I know that you got to learn a few things. And I would ask, I mean, if you have something that you want to learn, definitely within Q3 or Q4, I may go ahead to run another session of this or segment of the Ground Up series, and then we'll see how that goes. So if you have anything in particular, just hit me up and then let me know what you'd want to learn over the period. But aside that, I mean, in the coming weeks, in the coming months, I'll be sharing on a number of things, everything that you could actually think of. So working with EC2s, working with the cloud formation, Terraform. I mean, all of these things that would seem a bit advanced, okay, but we will just build up from where we started. And I feel that this actually provides a basis that we could build off. So I'm definitely looking forward to how all of that will look like. And so thank you so very much. I really appreciate your time and then sharing all of that with me. And I'm definitely looking forward to what would come in the next period. And of course, do share with others. And I hope you had a happy time learning as I did. I'm always your instructor, Ian Mingo, and thank you for watching.